Thanks, Maricela. Appreciate it. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Yarly. Thanks for being here. All right. So let's see, about 2 folks are in here. I'm going to wait to see once everybody gets settled, since the keynote just finished, which I know was amazing. Once we get settled, oh, hi. Hi, Chris. Thanks for being here. Once everybody gets settled and I get the go-ahead, we will get started. Hi, Karen. Hi, Josh. Oh, thanks for the good luck, Karen. You're so nice. I heard the keynote was amazing. I hope it's recorded. I'd love to listen to it. All right. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Maricela. Very cool. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It sounds like I have the go-ahead to get started, so I'm super excited. I'm Jennifer Spellazza. I go by Jen. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And you'll get to know me more in a little bit here. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started with some of the presentation and the content that we'll be discussing. Just a lot of storytelling today. All right, let me share my screen. I got really good at this right before y'all got here. All right. Oh, wow. StreamYard is so cool. All right, cool beans, everybody. So hi again. I'm still Jen. So today we have a little bit of time. We're going to talk about some storytelling, specifically my relationship with allyship. But before we move forward to get started, because it's a Saturday and we have the polar vortex coming in, I want everybody to kind of, wherever you're sitting in your chair or the couch or the bed or wherever you are, just kind of sit up straight and kind of stretch out. And then focus your energy on everything that you know about allyship. So take a breath and then kind of externalize what you think you know about allyship. And then we're going to move forward because I want to tell you a story and then we're going to circle back to it. And I really want y'all to come away with a good feeling about some next actionable items and steps. Okay, so stretch out. Pop your shoulder if you need. I got bad shoulders, but stretch it out. Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. Everybody's ready for allyship? We're pretty pumped? Good deal. We shall get started. So today we're going to talk about allyship in you, and a lot of my storytelling is going to be infused with my own identities and experiences. So I have a colleague that I work closely with, Dr. Mitch Nasser, and he and I were working on an implicit bias training. And he said, you know, Jen, if you're ever worried about how folks are going to receive information, maybe round in a disclaimer bias. And I said, okay. So as you can see, and if anyone is a psychology major, sometimes you'll see this in the discipline with research papers, like the bias of the researcher was infused and they might note what those identities are. So this work was created through the lens and identities and experiences of Jen Spellazza. The creator owns that their biases are a part of this work because I'm just going to be storytelling. So you're going to see this story through my lens as a white, cisgender, American English-speaking woman, cis woman, who's also gay, queer, or lesbian. I'm able-bodied, but my mental health, you know, sometimes with my social anxiety and depression, sometimes that impacts how I show up in the world. And those are some of my identities. So you're going to see some of that storytelling as we move forward, but I want you to know I own that, okay? That's my bias disclaimer. Big thanks to Dr. Mitch Nasser. He's an amazing teacher. And so who I am, you know that I'm Jen, but I am the coordinator for about 1 year with the CDI, the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. It's new to Lindenwood. It's been really fun. I get to work with Karen and Josh and Maricela and myself are actually working on a Pride Summit for the state of Missouri. So, but I've been at Lindenwood for 5 years, in higher education for 8 years, and I've kind of grown into being a student advocate, and that's how we're going to see the story of allyship and you kind of unfold. Because I'm just going to tell you a story about something I went through, and I want you to take away points of that story, and hopefully I hope you see yourself in my story, and that somewhere, wherever you are in your spaces, wherever you might be, as in your year, as a student, as a professional, wherever you are, that you infuse allyship in what you do. But I'm just going to tell you my story and how it worked for me. Okay, so let's keep it cruising. A quick overview. I am very happy to be here. I do have to give a shout out to Brittany Brown in the Lindenwood Learning Academy. The story today, you're going to hear about a fellowship that I did on Lindenwood's campus. And the Lindenwood Learning Academy is through our HR department, Human Resources. And it was a fantastic experience. I got a lot of constructive feedback on my fellowship, which is called LindenAlly. I got to do some branding with our marketing department, and they actually created that logo that you see there. And it was a really rewarding experience. And so I thought it would be best if I can continue to tell the story. Okay, so I'm going to tell you why it was built. I'm going to tell you how it was built. And the points that I would want all of you to take away is my successes, right? But we also should teach each other about the mistakes that we made. So I am going to talk about some of the pitfalls and some of my shortcomings, because experiences, they're made up of mistakes. Mistakes are oftentimes our best teachers, okay? So right. And then, like I said, the takeaway essentially is I would like all of you, wherever you might be, to create your own ally development program. Whether it be career or college or spiritual place or a volunteer place, wherever you might be, carry on what allyship can be with all of us, because it's really impactful and it's really important, and it sets a good foundation for teamwork. So if you have a classmate, if you have a colleague, wherever you might be in life, when you build allies, you get your people on board with you, and you can definitely go farther together. So, and I had to kind of curb my pride because I have an ego, and I had to ask for help. So there's a spoiler alert. That's one of the pitfalls. Jen has an ego. So getting back to the agenda and some of the storytelling, why was LindenAlly built, right? There's a couple unhappy things that we're going to talk about. So I kind of want to pause. This is kind of like a content warning. There's very unhappy incidences on Lindenwood's campus that were published through our student journalism through the Linden link. And so that notified campus, and then people were kind of called to action, like, hey, let's show up better for each other. But the bad stuff that happened, you might see some of like, oh man, that's really heavy, that's really hard. So just kind of be prepared for that. Because like a quick overview, it's unhappy stuff that happens to the LGBTQ community. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But we're going to talk about the students. There's 2 incidents. The students are the good part. And this all transpired through the year of 2018 and 2019. So I'm actually on the back end of it. I completed the fellowship probably about 6 months ago, a little bit more, 6 to 8 months ago, okay? So let's get into some of the storytelling. This is just a screenshot from the Linden link about the first incident that happened. We have a really awesome Pride Rock on campus, and through Karen and Josh's office, you can request to paint it. And there's student orgs, there's different reasons you can paint it. As a co-advisor for the GSA, the Gender Sexualities Alliance, I was like, hey, let's paint it rainbow for October, because it's LGBTQ history, herstory, and their story month. And so we did, and in the fall of 18, unfortunately, while there was a group of us, we had just finished painting, I was there, somebody yelled at us. And it was essentially the story how it was captured by the president of the GSA at the time. We had talked a lot about it, and we were like, it was a homophobic slur. We were yelled at, and it was really unhappy. It was very, very upsetting. And for me, I was a full-time employee at the time, I was in admissions, I was like, oh, this isn't good. I've got to try. I've got to do something, right? So this was the first incident that happened. And the students that were there, it was actually 3 seniors who were there the first time. And the 4 of us we were all, and we still kind of check in on each other. How you doing? How you showing up in the world? Are you okay? But this was pretty unhappy a couple years ago. And then it happened again. And that's really hard. And this time it was more of a heterogeneous group of people. It was a bigger group. There was first year, sophomore, juniors, and the Linden Link picked it up again. And I was there. And when I called, security, the first thing that the person who was on duty, who fielded my call, the first thing that person said, they go, "It happened again?" Because a lot of people knew about it and a lot of people had rallied behind it. And so I had already at this point created LindenAlly. So in the spring of 2019, I had worked with a couple characters that you're going to learn about. But because it happened again, this illustrates the evidence that it's kind of like we all can show up a little bit better. And the Linden Link covered it again. And in our partnership, because this time it was a transphobic slur, not a homophobic, and it was in November, and it's when we painted the rock for TDOR, which is Transgender Day of Remembrance. And we asked Linden Link to partner with us, and Lindsay Alden, who covered it, she was very sympathetic, very empathetic, and she said, how can I help? So instead of just covering it, it was like, can I call people to action? And she was a good partner. She was an ally in the process, and she called attention to it. Like, hey, it happened again. This is what we can do to be better. And we talk a lot about DEI statement, the non-discrimination statement, the bias incident reporting mechanism that we have at Lindenwood. And so this is the heaviest part of the presentation today. And so as I click forward, I want you to take a breath and breathe it out and let it go. Because in my journey with allyship and all of my identities, like I mentioned, these things impacted me because I'm in the LGBTQ community. I'm a queer woman. I'm a gay woman. I'm a lesbian woman. And so as a co-advisor for the students, and something that really hurt me the second time when I was with this group is that the first year, it happened in 2018, nobody cried. We went to our secondary emotion, which is anger. But in this group, there were people who were very visibly upset. And it was kind of like, all right, we really got to get a little bit louder about how we can be more inclusive and not tolerant, but accepting. And allyship can hold that space. And with storytelling, this is essentially the why. There's two incidents, which are ugly and yucky, but the students, they are a huge part of why LindenAlly was built and why allyship is so important to me. So that's my storytelling. And before I move forward, I hope in your head, whatever you want to build allyship on, whatever topic, I hope that you can kind of mold and craft your story to share with people why allyship is important to you. So pitfall was his ego. And I was also at work, and I was scared, and I had not come out until that point. I had worked at Lindenwood until 2015, and I did come out. People would ask about my life, and I would never hide who I was, but I also wouldn't come out in front of big work meetings. And so I took some time, spoke with my support circle, and I decided that I really needed to start strategically coming out in spaces, because if the students were being yelled at with these slurs, they needed to know that there were employees who were very impacted as well. And so I took that on, and I wanted to be an ally to the students and say, hey, I'm Jen, pronouns are she, her, hers, I'm a lesbian, this is what happened to me, because I was there both times, where's the camera, both times, and it also impacted me and my mental health. But I had to stop being quiet about it. So I started growing my courage. I started coming out in spaces, and I started telling the story. And I realized that people were like, wow, Jen, this happened to me too. This happened to me too. And so I started growing a team of other allies around the GSA. And then from there, I was like, okay, it's okay to cry. It's okay to talk about things that are hard. Glennon Doyle says we can do hard things, and we can. And so this GIF, because I'm so cool and fancy, is essentially what a lot of people in the admissions office at Linden would say, because they're my admissions family. This is where I was when all this happened. And we would always tell people like, hey, teamwork makes the dream work. Let's do this. And so it's not about an individual, it's about all of us. And so I took that from admissions and I started infusing that into allyship, because you just got to use what you know. And so this is a lot. But after the allyship, LindenAlly and the whole fellowship was over, I was asked to create a poster, and I wanted to take my data and actually put it into an academic scholarly space. And so this is something that I built with the help of my colleagues. The first DEI fellow was actually Dr. Stephanie Affel, and I just kind of modeled my poster after hers. And I did a pre-assessment like she did. I did a post-assessment like she did. She had about 100 folks. I had about 100 folks, and she kind of set the tone for all things diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hers was on a book, Whistling Vivaldi by Claude Steele, who will be speaking at Lindenwood virtually on Wednesday, March 3rd for our Day of Dialogue. And it's kind of like Lindenwood is creating this DEI conversation, and LindenAlly was a part of it. And it's really exciting. So you can't see much of this, but I did want to show you in an academic sense for the students on the call, as you move into your career spaces, your work, like you do your school work now, you'll continue to do that work as you become a career professional in whatever field you want to get into. So always record data. Data is very important. I had more responses on my pre-test than my post-test, but it still gave me information to track. Do people understand allyship? Do people understand why the LGBTQ community needs allyship? And those are things I wanted to measure. And all the metrics, they did increase. People were starting to get it. And I got to measure that, and it's really cool. So, Jen's ego. Bum, bum, bum. It's a player in this story. I've had to check my ego many times. But the way I did it is I reached out to people who were smarter than me. And so I call these people the scientist and the trailblazer. And these two colleagues, they are faculty members, helped me build essentially what LindenAlly is. And I'm very grateful. And so our scientist friend is a faculty member in public health at Lindenwood. It's Dr. Amy Esland. I was taking notes on a single piece of paper, and I had written so many notes I couldn't read any of it, and I just looked at it every day, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I had finished my master's, I had my undergraduate, I was English and education and business and management, but I didn't really have a sound science background. And so I was like, if I want to quantify what I want to do, I need somebody who's really good at metrics and measurement. And so I found a scientist on campus. And Dr. Esland and I, we sat down, and she listened to me just and she just listened. And then because she's very intelligent, she turned our colleague touch base essentially into an academic advising situation. And she was like, okay, let's talk. I think I know what you need. I think you need a logic model. And so she walked me through the logic model, which I'm grateful for. And that kind of helped that piece of paper with all my notes. All of a sudden, it got organized into a better system, and I created actionable points from it. And so I checked my ego, and I crowdsourced. I found the scientist. I found new information, new ways to show up. And essentially what was built from there, I got 4 broad-reaching goals, very vague. And then I had 8 specific objectives that were measurable. And those things built the pre-assessment and the post-assessment. And so all of a sudden, LindenAlly, it was kind of like, okay, this is starting to make sense, right? And so the other person, because I question myself a lot, maybe in the way of imposter syndrome, there was a very brave, bold colleague of mine, and I call her the trailblazer, because she would speak up and probably say what everyone else was thinking, but she had the courage to say it. And she's actually the program chair of our gender studies program at Lindenwood. And that's Dr. Heather Brown Hudson. And so these 2 faculty members took everything that I was trying to do, and they were like, here's a logic model. Here's some courage to keep speaking up. You got this, Jen. And that was my team. They built me up. Those were my first LindenAllys to actually launch this program. And I've kind of gone all over the place chronologically, but at this time, we're still in like April of 2019. And then the other thing that I'll say, wherever you are in your spaces, you've got to know your resources. if you're going to do promo, if you're going to do a strategic marketing plan and get the word out, you've got to have a catchy name, which is essentially what LindenAlly was. And I asked somebody to make a logo. So I wanted to make it kind of trendy. I think that's the millennial in me, right? And so that's how it was built. And I again, had to check my ego. And out of this came the actual measurable objectives and the big, broad, overreaching goals. I hope you can see my GIF. I'm really impressed with it. But that's essentially what I looked like, is staring at this piece of paper with all these scribbles. I was kind of like, I think I have something here, but I don't know what yet, because I wanted to make it into something. And so essentially with my colleagues, my allies that I started to build, I wanted to encourage allyship. I wanted to create space for allies to speak up. I wanted to remove barriers, okay? And then I wanted to reduce microaggressions, because what happened at the Pride Rock wasn't a microaggression, right? That was a slur. That was like verbal assault. That was very painful and heavy. But on Lindenwood's campus, in order to quantify those big goals, I have my objectives. I wanted about 100 folks to join. I got about 100 folks. Didn't get the Belleville folks, but I did get 26 students. Pretty pumped about that. So I actually oversat my goal, because I had 105 participants and I had 26 students. So I oversat my goals. I did end up measuring that I increased awareness of microaggressions, I increased awareness of LGBTQ plus allyship. I started talking more about trainings and resources and where it was located. And then we also talked about accountability. That can be a scary word for folks. But I did all these things, and then a pitfall on objective number 8, because in March of 20, because I started this in August of 19 and I wanted it to go to May of 20, but I missed 2 months in my fellowship because of the COVID-19 pivot. So I had to change some of my metrics so that people could meet their goals, but unfortunately we didn't have everybody move on their ally ranking by 3 spots. So there was a pitfall, and I give myself grace on that, but it is important to acknowledge in the story. All right. And so whatever you do, if it's a research paper or a presentation, this is one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people. Begin with the end in mind. And so I go back to this piece of paper that I had like snapshotted a graphic on that I found online, and I just made all my notes. When I was staring at that, I was trying to begin this project with the end in mind, but I couldn't see it yet, right? So I went to Dr. Esland, I went to Dr. Brown Hudson, and they helped me start visualizing, because I was a soccer player too. And when I would practice, I would visualize scoring goals and visualize playing good defense. So it's okay to sit there and visualize. Just sitting there and doing nothing is really important. And apparently you have to make this face. So I thought that was a pretty cool Futurama info or a GIF right there. And so this was the infographic that I made. So it's just an 8-point spectrum, nothing fancy. I made this in PowerPoint, okay? But this is from 1 to 8. I understand, I don't understand, I'm leaning into my courage, and I quantified all of these rankings with a number of ally points, because for each behavior in allyship, people were given points. And so really I just gamified what it is to be an ally to LGBTQ people. So kind of fun, but it really tested people, and we actually had some really good successes. And I don't think you can see this, but I did have about 4 different types of ally point groupings that started with individual. And if you have a high level ally, especially with the LGBTQ community, and they're like, no, I'm good. I know misgendering, I know dead naming, I know everything there is to know. It's like, okay, that's good if you're good at it. But the second group, the other challenge, is recruiting people to want to be an ally. And that's a challenge. And that came from admissions, because I'm always in a recruiting space. And then we also had miscellaneous. I just added miscellaneous because people were like, Jen, I did this. Can I get points? And I was like, of course. And then we also just had team meetings monthly. So people would get an easy 10,000 points for a team meeting. So again, it's the gamification and creating incentive to get people to want to show up as an ally. This specific case is for people who are LGBTQ+. So again, there's my poster. It had a lot of really good points. If anybody wants any feedback, Okay. Oh, thank you. If anybody wants to get their eyes on this, I can send it to you so you can see how to build your own poster, because I felt really cool when I did this. I was pretty pumped about it. All right, so let's keep moving. And so the introduction on my poster, I did have to explain what everything is. What is LindenAlly? What is allyship? What is an individual ally? And then essentially, how does LindenAlly work? Okay, and I'll tell you the base point of what I did. I researched and I did find a Forbes article. My business master's points me towards Forbes and Harvard Business Review. I love reading their stories, but Sheree Atchison did publish a really great article in 2018 about how essentially allyship is the key to unlocking diversity. So we all have to start leaning in, and as a white person, well, I guess as a cisgender person, my privilege is I can create space for people who are transgender. As a white person, I can create space for our BIPOC friends, people of color, people who are Black, people who are Asian, people who are Hispanic or Latino, Latina, Latinx, right? So with our privileged identities, we can kind of like expand our privilege bubble and help other people speak up. And it was a really good general overview of what allyship can be if people lean into it, because it takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery. So this was how I broke it down so people could understand. These are the measurements. I was even able to calculate standard deviation, which is like the calculation of, is this just by chance? So the standard deviation is to say, nope, this is pretty on point. But the one thing I couldn't figure out was my t-test. I'm not that smart, but you can see the uptick in trends. You can see my almost 100 pre-assessment response and only about 48 on the post-assessment. Only had about a 50% response rate, almost 100% response rate on the pre-test. Post-test, I also issued it during COVID, so I didn't get the response rate that I needed, but that's okay. I still got data, right? And so as you can see, the mean is that, because it was like a 1 to 10, I should have used a Likert scale, but I did use a 10-point net promoter score. I used an NPS. I should have used Likert. I understand that now. A Likert scale is usually like a 7-point. And so you can see that the mean, it's like everybody's almost in that promoter range, right? Which you want to be like 9 or 10. But I do have some passive, which hang out, I think, between like 6 and 8. Or maybe 5 and 8, but I didn't have any detractors on my net promoter score, which is essentially maybe 1 to 5 of people who are like, no, I don't get it. So my overall average is that, like, yeah, people are passive or promoting that they get what my points were in my objectives. How likely are you to agree about resources? Do you understand allyship? And so really, can we show up better for each other? Okay. So I'll note there's a lot of text, but I have to note one of my biggest wins in LindenAlly. I was so proud of this person. And it talks a lot about knowledge and stuff like this, but it's down at the bottom. I don't know if you can read it, but in response to what successes were achieved, one of the post-assessment responses were, for the first time ever, I just presented to over 80 people and used my pronouns without even thinking about it. And that was one of the first LindenAlly challenges was, can you introduce yourself with your pronouns? And it's really awkward at first. And I admit I was really awkward at first, but now I've developed a cadence. Hi, my name is Jennifer. I go by Jen. My pronouns are she, her. And so as you get this cadence in your introductions, it's completely appropriate that it just kind of flows out. And that was one of the most validating responses, because it's like we are building in inclusive habits in the spirit of allyship. And I just thought that was so awesome and so special. And I did want to share that with all of you. We had a lot of wins, but that was my favorite. It's kind of like I did it so often, it just kind of came out. It was just like a part of who I was. So pretty cool there. These are some of the other metrics and things like this. And a quick other success, I really feel out of LindenAlly because of how much campus owned it and they really enjoyed it. While I was still in admissions with my allyship, they asked me to be the coordinator of the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. And so I actually got to move into a new space, and I I got a bunch of donations. And so we got books and buttons and things like that. And that was really, really awesome. I was really, really excited about that. And that I have a new career opportunity too. And I love admissions, but I actually get to really have tough conversations all the time. And it's my favorite part about what I do as the coordinator of the CDI. All right, so we'll keep cruising. And so I'm right here on our sites. I can open. There we go. I think we're back. I'm sorry if that was my internet, but I think I can field some Q&A in the comments if anyone has any questions, but I'm going to talk about key takeaways, my resources, and then also I'm going to plug a Day of Dialogue event, okay? So real quick, if you've been taking notes, great. If you've been listening to my story and you're like, yeah, I was in class and I didn't have the courage to speak up, or I was in a meeting and I kept getting interrupted, but I had a really good idea. If you're thinking about growing your allyship and being brave in any of your spaces, these are some of the takeaways. And I hope that when you breathed out allyship and kind of compartmentalized it over here, now's the time where you can start bringing back allyship. And as you reassess what you want to do, I hope from here you start making actionable change. Whether, like I said, if you're in a classroom, if you're in a department meeting, if you're on an athletic team and you have something important to say, I want you to think like, I just have to be brave enough to say it. But if I can't say it right now, maybe I should talk to somebody first and I should start building an ally. Whatever it is that you need to do, I want you to think about that now as we kind of wrap up, okay? About 10 minutes to go. So the key takeaways: build your team. Jen had an ego. I had to check my ego. I'm not the smartest person in the room. I need to ask for help. I don't ask for help all the time. I'm very proud, but that's okay. I just had to check myself. So my students were my motivation, the scientist was my how, and the trailblazer gave me courage. And I asked for help. So it's okay to do that. You've got to speak up. And if you're uncomfortable face-to-face, make a phone call. If you're uncomfortable with a phone call, send an email. There's too many ways for us to connect and communicate right now. But whatever you do, just ask for help and lean into that feeling of this makes me uncomfortable. Lean into it and you might grow a little bit. You might learn something new about yourself, okay? And then the other thing, know your resources. I asked for help. I was like, I think I know what I need, but I don't have the tool. How do I find the tool? So I found a marketing team. I could have used Microsoft Forms, but I wanted something else. So I asked for a Qualtrics account. I learned Excel. My master's classes in accounting, economics, and statistics helped me learn Excel really well. And so I built everything. I built a game card in Excel. So just know your resources, know your tools, ask for help, begin with the end in mind, try to visualize, take notes, and then because COVID interrupted some of my data, that was okay, but be graceful, give yourself grace and give others grace and pivot, okay? It's okay. And as Moira Rose says, when one of us shines, all of us shine, okay? So I think at this point, we'll kind of wrap up and then we'll move to Q&A. Y'all can punch any questions in the comments and we can kind of talk about it. But before then, these were my resources. I used a Forbes article. Okay, that was Sheree Atchison, like I mentioned. Allyship is the key to unlocking the power of diversity. The infographic was inspired by PFLAG, which is essentially a guide to being a trans ally. I took that spectrum model and I changed it a little bit. They had like a little superhero. And then GLAD, 10 ways to be an ally and a friend. And I infused a lot of those into the game card. Introduce yourself with your pronouns. Ask people how you can be a better ally. And then I just assigned points, 5,000 points, 10,000 points, 20,000 points, 50,000 points, right? So this is my signing off and we can move into the comments. But before I do that, for anybody, if you're Lindenwood based, Maryville based, and I think there's another college that was here, and I don't want to mess up the name because I know it's a long title that has to do with, I think, health sciences and pharmacy. But we are having an event at Lindenwood. It's the Day of Dialogue. It'll be Wednesday, March 3rd. And we have a pretty cool registration system. All you have to do is create an account and you can actually attend. So we're going to open up conversations with an opening speaker, a closing speaker, and about 10 individual sessions. And it's all focused on civic engagement and social awareness, which is another way to say allyship. Okay, so if you can make it, great. If not, I wish you well on this Saturday. Please stay warm. Next week, we're supposed to have a vortex. It's going to be so cold. But thank you for the time. I greatly appreciate it. And I think now, if you're still with me, if you want to go ahead and punch in a question into the comments, I can field that question. And we can just do a Q&A, just a Q&A for the last 7 minutes before y'all get to go to your next session, okay? So who has questions for me? Oh, Naomi, hey, we got to work together last year. I hope you're well. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Maricela. So odd. Sorry if I said it wrong. Thank you. I appreciate it. Awesome. So we did have some more folks in there. Very cool. Hey, hope everything's going well. Very cool. All right. Well, I'll stop sharing. Very cool. And I'll just hang out here. I'm going to watch the comment section in case anyone has questions, okay? Or until my moderator tells me my time's up. All right.
I'll give you all the time you need, Jennifer.
Whoa! Hey, Smith.
Hi. How's it going?
That was fun. How are you?
Great job. Great job.
You're kind.
Great job. I don't see any questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't either. Hey, well, okay, but if you don't have questions, I don't want to like sidebar, but is there a recording of the keynote from James? Can I get a recording of that?
I don't know. If so, I will share that with you.
Cool. Yeah. But he talked about leadership, right?
Yeah, it was great. I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast so that everyone can enjoy their lunch. We do have a networking room that will also be open before our next sessions, which are at 12. So grab your lunch, either playlist, sold playlists on Spotify, or join us in our networking room. So like I said, I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast, and then Jen and I can talk for a moment backstage.
Oh, fun. Thanks, Karen.
You're welcome.